Thank God it's Friday. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to 55 minutes of current and relevant business conversations. That's what we do here on Business Morning. I'm Ini John Meko, and we start from the global space as usual, where oil prices rose on Friday, buoyed by optimism over a potential trade deal between the United States and the European Union, and reports of Russian plans to restrict gasoline exports to most countries. So when we look at numbers, we see that Brent futures gained 17 cents, that's about 0.3%, and gone up from $68 we've been having in a couple of days now to $69, $69.35 a barrel. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude also went up, gained 15 cents, that's 0.2%, to $66.18 a barrel. Oil settled 1% high on Thursday, driven by media reports of expected cuts to Russian gasoline exports. And this overshadowed news of Chevron Corp potentially securing U.S. approval to resume production in Venezuela. President Donald Trump's administration is preparing to allow limited oil operations in the sanctioned OPEC nation, and U.S. crude inventories draws and hopes for a trade deal between the U.S. and the EU for lower tariffs. That's also lifting features which fell earlier in the week over fears of worsening global trade war. Two European diplomats are saying that the EU and the US were moving toward a trade deal that could include a 15% US baseline tariff on EU imports and possible exemptions. That could pave way for another major trade agreement following that deal that was reached with Japan. And the group chief executive of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, that's back home here in Nigeria, they say that they are assuring of speedy delivery of their Jakarta, Kaduna, Kano natural gas pipeline project, that's AKK. He made this known at the Gas Power New Energy Directorate for the 2025 AKK Business Development Forum, where he stated that the project will unlock economic prosperity when it comes on board. The NNPCL board describes the gas pipeline as a strategic economic catalyst for the country, which is expected to reshape the landscape through power generation and industrial growth. The Securities and Exchange Commission, that's the SEC, has clarified its position regarding the recent off-market deal carried out on the shares of First Holdco transaction, which involved parties on July the 16th. In a statement signed by its head of external relations, Efe Ebelo, the capital market regulator says that it granted a no objection to the transaction after due consideration and in full compliance with applicable requirements. The SEC explains that there was no subsequent request for additional information from the Central Bank of Nigeria following the conclusion of the transaction. And so that's their stance on that. And looking at investment platform, AfriInvest is pushing for ethical investment instrument, and they had a meeting recently to launch one of those.
Nigeria needs more investment managers such as AfriInvest Asset Management, who are appropriately experienced and licensed by the Securities and Exchange Commission to come out and launch investment products for the teeming Nigerian population. There's clearly opportunities for people to put their money in the bank account, but obviously if it's in the bank account, you don't earn much interest. Now, if you then want to invest in interest-yielding products, but you're a faith-based person, you may not really want to put all your money in those kind of instruments. Hence, the AfriInvest Halal Fund creates a window for you to know that your investments are being managed in accordance with the Sharia board, because we have a body of experts, the advisory council of experts who make sure that it's compliant. And so other faith-based investors who have a view that they should invest their money based on ethical standards can also take advantage of this investment option. And we believe that this instrument really opens the field for many people who have strict investment guidelines to use this opportunity and make sure they're getting a decent return on investment on their money.
All right, now let's explore some of the recent happenings or data that we've had in the economy in recent times and see the perspective of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. We have here in the studio the Chief Economist, Dr. Shegun Omishakin, right here. Dr. Omishakin, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having
Yeah,
me.
so we've had a very busy week. Last couple of weeks, we've had the rebased GDP, we've had inflation, we've had NPC, and we know, of course, NESG is always watching and talking, about some of these things. I think the latest I would like for you to comment on would be the GDP, rebased GDP from 2019. We see we grow the first quarter, but I guess one of the most interesting findings from that is what real estate has done. Even though we've been warned that we shouldn't get too excited, because even though real estate, the value or the volume contributed to the GDP is higher than oil, we still need oil as our mainstay. So help us to balance all of this perspective.
Yeah, so let's start from the essence of rebasing. As you said, we've been on this journey for a very long time, and we must also credit the MBS for finally, releasing the long-awaited data. And yes, we have some insights regarding what we have seen. But I think on the macro level, what we've seen is an economy that is showing some level of robustness in terms of different activities across sectors. We've also seen an economy that could have been more, the prospect could have been more enhanced, if not because we've been having some challenges with our FX. So if you look at it in terms of the naira value, we are encouraged. But if you go back to the value in terms of the global measurements, we are not still doing as it were fine. But stability is established across sectors. Remember this year, January, we started the idea of the government concentrating on stabilizing the macro environment, at least for the next 2 years, so that after that we can then move from stabilization to consolidation and then acceleration. I think the major indicators we received from the latest rebase is that indeed the Nigerian economy has to some extent achieved that general stability across board. Yes, you've seen some sectors not performing, as expected, especially the oil and gas. But again, if you compare the current performance with what we've had so far, you see signs of stability. We're still having challenges in the sectors, but still, we've seen the sector that is now becoming a little bit, we are experiencing some level of deepening, especially going to the side of the role of Dangote refineries in terms of the importations and the but I think a lot needs to be done when it comes to the deepening of the sector, the oil and gas sector itself. So above all, I think it's a good news, but the main challenge we've always been talking about is still how inclusive the economy is. How do we feel the economy on the road? I think that's just the major challenge that the current reform should be looking into.
So I hear two things. I hear you talk about deepening the oil and gas sector. Comparing that to our efforts to diversify the economy, seeing that services is the one that had a higher part now,
Yeah.
I thought we should be celebrating that.
Yeah, we should. Actually, I think anything that brings us closer to our dream, we should celebrate it. While we'll answer the question of how sustainable this will be without the role of oil and gas, that's a valid question. But anything that pushes us into deepening the activities along sectors, increasing our GDP every time, then I think we should be celebrating that. Service sectors have been playing very, tremendous role over the years. So I don't see why suddenly oil and gas will, just overtake service sector. But oil and gas should be the foundation that, triggers every other sector. We talk about industrialization. You cannot achieve that without the oil and gas sector. You talk about inclusive growth. You can't. So oil and gas is a major sector that we need to concentrate on. But again, all other sectors are doing fine. So let's see how we move from here to where we desire to be maybe at the end of the year.
Maybe. And then you also, another thing that pops out from the rebased GDP is informal sector.
Yeah.
We saw that the MBS gave a lot of attention to that
Yeah.
because we've been talking about how a major part of the economy is in the informal sector, and so we miss out on taxes, miss out on even the size of the economy because it's in the informal sector.
Yeah. And that's why, as I said, debates and the government's focus on inclusive development and growth is very important. As in, the recent data shows that you'll be right if you refer to the Nigerian economy as highly informal economy. And that means that it will be very tough to see reforms penetrating people, as in having strong impact on people. Informality is not just about the activities we are recording. It's also it also speaks to how efficient government's policy reforms will easily get to people. High informal sector or informal economy will have people at the lower base, millions of them who will not be reached. So when you have lower set of informality or smaller set of informality, then you can see that government can easily reach them. So I think that's the current challenge, whether in terms of the employment, jobs, activities, and so many other things. The current database has shown to us that we have more to do with formalizing the informal sector or making the informal sector to be more functional, as it were, in the current state. But again, as I said, let's see where we go from here.
And I guess that's why recently the conversation has been, yes, we have encouraging macroeconomic data, but the micro scenario hasn't caught up with that.
Yeah. Yeah, again, how do we, and the role of informal sector, as I said, is not just us looking at the activities that are going on. There's also looking at how do we capture the activities for policy purpose. How do we know number of people who are working here, number of people who need this? And you also see the implication of this during the recent subsidy removal reform. We all know it was a good move. It was the right policy. But because of the size of the economy that is, that moves towards informality, you have huge costs of trade-off. And that is the meaning. So, for instance, now you've removed the subsidy. How do we make sure that people at the lower level are not suffering for it? How do we do all those whatever data? So we don't have the data. You can't transfer wealth. You can't transfer money or any other thing. Help people at that side because the population is huge. And that's why I think it's also very good, and we need to commend the MBS for coming up with the role of informal sector in the Nigerian economy. Over time, I want to see a situation where we have what you have referred to as micro data, micro signal insights, complementing the macro information and indicators that we'll talk about. And that means that we are moving from just looking at the economy itself into a more inclusive economy. That emphasizes inclusion, having the ability to measure what goes on beyond the macro level. That is the simple meaning of inclusion, because if you cannot measure it, you cannot impact it. And I think that's what the path the MBS maybe have decided to go, to look at what happens more beyond the macro headlines.
Well, I want to ask, do we need to formalize our informal sector for us to have a more robust economy, or for the policies and the benefits of the reform to be able to, as you said, be inclusive? Is there a need to formalize the informal sector, or can we just leave them as an informal sector but give them attention and find ways to drive down the benefits to them?
That's formalizing. Formalizing isn't just about collecting taxes from them or making sure that they are registered, as it were. The essence of formalizing is access. How do we know we have these businesses or business activities? How do we know they exist? Getting closer. And there is no way you can get closer if you don't break the barrier between you and those operators. When I say you, I mean the government. And one of the ways to do that is to recognize them, whether you call it formalizing it, whether you call it collecting taxes, I don't know, but recognizing that they do exist. One, and when you recognize them, you will also want to increase their role in terms of collecting data. Now you collect data from the known former businesses, companies, you know. You also want to include them by looking at what they do. And there is no way a government can contact an informal activities or informal operators to collect data or to know what they are doing when you don't have their name register with you. So it will also mean that where you encourage CAC registration, it means that you encourage, maybe you lower the taxes, and I think the current tax law has also answered so many questions along informal sector. But whatever you call it, formalizing them or not, there is a need for us to concentrate more on that sector. It's not just about the business activities or operators, it's also about the workers, people that are there. As the data reveals, more than 90% of the Nigerian workers operate in that sector. So if you have more than 90% of the Nigerian population operating in a sector you know nothing about, tell me how reforms will be sustainable. Tell me how reforms will be efficient. And I think that is what we are experiencing now. Reform can have a good macro outlook, but when it doesn't come down to that level of impact, people might likely want to say it doesn't make any sense. But ordinarily, it does.
So let's believe that since the NBS has started giving attention to the informal sector, collecting data, I think they also have the household survey through which they are reaching out to the informal sector and all of that. Perhaps slowly but surely, we will get them formalized one way or the other. And then also with what the tax reform is supposed to bring into the scene from next year, that will encourage more of them to get registered. So perhaps we would have more.
Yeah, and perhaps it will also help the government in the process of designing reforms to be informal focused. Globally, there are informal sectors everywhere, even in the US, most developed countries in the world, you have them. There are significant size of informality. India, China, everywhere. But I think what the government, formalizing them will also help is to be able to design reforms that can easily reach the informal sector, or that the informal sector will easily understand, so that we don't look at the whole economy like macro, two sectors, these are sector, oil and gas, this and this and this. No, you also have the insight and the intelligence as government to reach out to those sectors, at least to reach out to those people, 90% of the Nigerian workers who are in this sector.
That you cannot ignore. You can't ignore 90%.
No, it's like the whole Nigeria. When we say 90%, it's like saying we are all the informal sector.
Yeah, Well, another interesting thing in the country now is the tax reform, which you've referred to. Supposed to start implementation by January and all of that. And what comes with that, apart from the exciting things, the exemption for small businesses and employees, is that it should bring in more revenue to the subnationals. Now, you've talked about the reforms. A major one is the subsidy removal. We've seen how that has increased revenue, FAC, especially to the subnationals. And the conversation is, so we will go to this journey again, and hopefully we're going to see more revenue, because the tax net will increase and all of that. And then we'll see even more revenue to the government, especially the subnationals. Who's holding them accountable? What are they using it for? Because if we're talking about inclusive development, it should start from the local governments are part of the FAC. Local government, state government, before we come to the federal government.
I think yes, you are right. First of all, the bill, the law now, in itself is not an end. It's not something that you've done. I think it helps us to gain some significant level of clarity as to what resources the Nigerian economy is leaving untouched in terms of the revenue to government and so many other things. But I think after that, it also identifies the role of implementation and monitoring. I believe so strongly that when people know how much their states are receiving, how much their local governments are receiving, maybe conversations over time will begin to shift from just looking at the role of the federal government, the president, ministers, to that of states. But it's still a collective work beyond the law they have. It's a collective role for every one of us to then know that, yes, this is my state, this is how much we are having, so how much of the development are we really experiencing.
But are the people looking at it? Do people care enough? It seems people are just, a lot of Nigerians are just concerned with, can I just go out there, hustle, and get food for my tummy and roof over my head? And so that leaves a lot of unaccountability, there, especially from the local government, because they are close to us. So they should have a lot of such lights on them. But it seems Nigerians we've given up. Giving up on government, and just let me just do my thing and live my life in peace.
Yeah, yes, I understand the sentiment, but again, you have institutions, you have groups,
NGOs,
and
CSOs.
you all know the role of NESG in this conversation. We don't give up. We may feel like, but we don't. For instance, this year we are hosting another summit, and it looks at some of the key points we have raised now. The link between sustaining the reforms we have started with, prosperous Nigeria or development, and then the role of inclusive growth. When you bring these three together, you understand that there is a need to have a more efficient policy reforms and implementation, and that is what we are dedicating this year's theme on. So it's when it feels like people should give up that I think that we need to rise up.
And I think you're also looking at the subnationals.
Yes,
I think we should begin to have more conversations around the subnationals.
Yeah, so we're having a whole day to have a conversation around subnationals. The governors will be there. And when we say subnationals, we are not just talking about how much these states are receiving. We are also talking about the opportunities, the economic, the integration, and the link with the federal government. Are there laws that may want to improve performance of a sector or a state that we need to look into? It's a lot of conversation around seeing Nigeria a far better economy by year 2030.
All right, we wish you the best in your summit. And
Thank you.
Well, I guess from this side, the media side, we're going to have to push in more.
Yeah, please do.
More light on the subnationals.
We'll be expecting you as usual.
Okay,
November 6 to 8.
I know,
October,
right?
rather, 6 to 8.
October, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Segun Mishakin, Chief Economist with Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Thank you for your time and views.
Thank you.
All right, well, it's not just the NESG that's concerned about the economy. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, they've held their quarterly press briefing during which they shared perspective on the state of the economy, business environments, policy developments, and other issues of national and regional significance. The president of the chamber, Mr. Gabriel Dahosa, he was there with other members of the Executive Council, and they said the economic reforms may be in the right direction, but there's a need to give more attention to geopolitical happenings.
In the light of global trade and geopolitical dynamics, we call on the federal government to reconsider its foreign policy mix to ensure that Nigeria is not left behind in global affairs and as it affects particularly international trade. In our recent alignment with BRICS, we must wisely choose our trade partners and global alignments to avoid consequences that can negatively affect our worldwide reputation and pursuits. In the face of continued tariff crisis and uncertainty, we must pay more attention to seriously supporting non-oil exports to more favorable destinations as we recalibrate our trade partnerships, with about 3,000 products now permitted to enter the United Kingdom at very favorable terms in a new policy shift. And just as the United States continues to announce more tariffs on Nigerian exports to the United States, it is time to support targeted exporters to increase our foreign earnings.
All right, that's president of LCCI, and we have him now joining us because we would like for him to elaborate on some of those concerns which LCCI shared at that briefing and perhaps suggest how it could be handled. Good morning, Mr. Dahosa, and thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So, Mr. Dahosa, you expressed concerns about BRICS at that meeting and Nigeria's involvement and part of the consequences as a part of what's happening in the bigger scene, the geopolitical scene globally. What are your worries especially with the U.S. We see the U.S. tariff kicking on from next week, Friday, August 1st, even though we're hearing some trade deals happening even before then. What are your major worries when it comes to Nigeria in all of this? BRICS and, of course, the tariffs.
Well, really, it's not a concern. It's not like a major concern, but it's a call to be strategic in the way we into BRICS. In other words, while we become engaged and even become member of BRICS, we have to understand that our relationship with non-BRICS countries need to be managed differently from the way they were being managed now. That's essentially the call. That while some parts of the economic stakeholders are saying we need to get into BRICS, absolutely, we need to get into BRICS. But at the same time, we need to be prepared for the effects of that entry into BRICS. We don't just go into BRICS and don't look at what we need to do. It's the call to be strategic in engagement. We are already engaging with all the BRICS countries, but formally getting into BRICS means that we have to recalibrate foreign policy, especially economic relations, with countries, particularly the United States, and understand that, yes, there's a trade-off in the process. It's not that we don't get into BRICS, we get into BRICS, but we have to understand the need to prepare for any consequences of doing that. And we believe as a country we have the capacity to do that because since the Obama administration, the US government have decided they will be independent of the world as far as oil and gas is concerned. They have achieved that. And all oil producing countries have re-strategized, they have rebalanced their business in the oil and gas sector. That's what we are talking about. That as we get engaged in BRICS, whatever else we are doing within the United States, apart from oil and gas, which we have not adjusted, we need to start adjusting it. We get the full benefits of BRICS and minimize any consequences that's coming from the direction of particularly the United States.
Yeah, but Mr.
That's the essence of that part of the...
Yeah, so Mr. Dahasa, when you say we need to be prepared, what kind of preparation, what signs do you want to see that will indicate that we're ready to go into BRICS and we can withstand the consequences? Hello,
the
Mr.
point is that
can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mr. Idahosa? Well,
yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I was asking, what would you like to see?
I can hear you clearly.
All right, great. I couldn't hear you for a bit. I was asking what you would like to see as signs of our preparation to go into BRICS and our ability to withstand the consequences should the United States decide, to face members of BRICS.
Well, I think perhaps we can quote a statement made famous by Barack Obama that you should never be afraid to negotiate and don't negotiate in fear. The entire trade with the rest of the world, if you take out the United States, the trade in the rest of the world is 83% or thereabout. So it's not as if there is any country in this world that cannot really survive without trading with America. So what we need to do is we decide that we want to engage fully with BRICS and we deal with any consequence in terms of negotiating the best relationship that we have with the United States. So we are not just receivers of any decisions that America makes, but we are able to negotiate with America with the best interests of Nigeria at the back of that negotiation. And it doesn't really have to do with size. It has to do with what you understand you need from America. And what do we really need from America in this time? Is it to sell our oil? Definitely not. Is it to get technology to grow our industries? Definitely not. is it a market for some of the products from small and medium enterprises, maybe food products, textiles, fashion, music? Yes, there's an American market for those products. And so our negotiations, we have that understanding between us that we have trade-offs. There are certain things America will need, that American people need, that we can still sell to them, and we should be able to negotiate rather than just receive any unilateral decision from America, which the current administration in America tries to impose on everybody. And a lot of countries have understood now that you really should and are able to negotiate with America and get a deal that makes sense. That's what essentially we are saying.
Yeah, Mr. Dowside, but I guess that would mean that as Africa, not even just as Nigeria, we should get to a level of adding value to our raw materials, our resources, even our skills and all of that. Do you see us on the path of doing that? Because I think that's where our strength lies as the continent.
Yeah, we will do that not just because of America, but we'll do that for the rest of the world. We need to improve the quality of our products. We need to improve our trade channels, our ports, our regulations. But we are doing that because we want to improve our exports of goods and services to the rest of the world, not just for America. So when we improve the quality of goods and services, we will be able to compete better with other suppliers to America. So the point is definitely we need to keep working, and we are working, talking with the business community is always working to improve the quality of services, the quality of goods, and the agencies that help the business community to do that are engaged with us from the ports, the tax, we see the tax reforms, the enabling laws to improve the acceptance of our goods around the world. That is going on. Again, we are saying that we should not be over concerned about America in all of that. We are exporting to all the countries in the world. Right now, our exports to America is less than 1 or 2%. The figure is extremely small. The imports from America is also extremely small. So whatever we are doing is to look at the world market. Our biggest market should be Africa under AFCFTA. We should continue to improve the quality of our products, that they are among the best in all countries, including America. So we should take a big view of how we deal with our joining BRICS. Even the BRICS market, the BRICS market has a larger market for Nigerian exports than
Mr.
America.
Dahausa, if you could hear
So
me.
we need to improve the quality of.
Except that now
Yes.
there's the factor that we are now net importers of U.S. crude in a country where we're supposed to be a major crude producer. And that could also, bring another side of this conversation, the fact that we're depending on the United States for crude.
That is a choice that has been made by an individual organization. The crude that is coming from America is available in many other countries. And this is what we are saying about how we position ourselves. Once we understand that for everything you get from America, you can get it from several other countries. It changes the dynamic. It changes the way you negotiate with America. Now we are temporarily importing crude from America because it is convenient for the individual organization that are not dependent on America. Whatever grade of crude you want to import in this world, there are several countries you can get it from. But it's just a business decision that at this time I want to take it from America. Again, we must always be in that position where we have options, where we are not dependent on any particular country for a particular product or service. That is what we are trying to put on the table. America will remain very relevant in the world, but the level of dependence that a country like Nigeria, the largest population, one of the largest economies in Africa, the level of dependence on America should be minimal. Brazil, of course, China and all the countries in the biggest economies in all the continents, Germany, Brazil, China, India, they are steadily minimizing their dependence on America for anything that's critical to their lives and to their economies. That is what I'm trying to make.
All right, President, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Gabriel Dahosa, thank you so much. And I do know you have a meeting this morning. Thank you for taking time out to join us on the program.
Thank you.
All right, let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to continue from where Mr. Dahosa left off, the issue of BRICS, Nigeria reducing its reliance on the United States and other geopolitical issues, and the tariff that's starting next week, Friday, August the 1st, and how all of this will feed into the domestic economy back here. Let's take a break first. When we come back, we'll have that conversation. Please stay with us. Welcome back. It's still Business Morning here on Channels Television, and we'll take that conversation that we had with Mr. Dahosa further now to bring in the connection between geopolitical issues outside the continent and how it's affecting Nigeria here. And we have to have this conversation, the Managing Director of ASCOM, Mr. Adio Ayodele. Mr. Ayodele, good morning.
Good
and
morning.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So I don't know if you heard a bit of the last conversation. We're talking about BRICS. And Mr. Dahosa is the president of Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industries, of the opinion that Nigeria needs to join BRICS as one of the ways to wean itself off dependence of the United States. But we also have to be ready for what the United States might decide to do. We know President Trump doesn't joke with America. It's America first. I don't know what your thoughts are on this.
Well, to be honest with you, we're now a partner member of BRICS. And I think that we must tread a strategic middle ground. Especially in international affairs, because you do not want to alienate the United States of America. They have too many leverage that they can pull against a developing economy like, the Nigerian economy, and we're hugely dependent on some of the multilateral institutions where we seek several interventions from. And so I would argue that, rather than completely, wholly join the BRICS bloc, I think it will make more strategic sense for us to just maintain that strategic neutrality that allows us to benefit from trade opportunities with the BRICS, and of course continue to explore opportunities with the United States and of course the Western countries. Of course, you know that just by our presence in the BRICS, we're threatened by an extra 10%
yes.
Tariff, which, if you add that to the already 14% that was slammed on us, raises our tariff to about 24%, which could be hugely problematic, for our economy. Because as we speak, because of the 14% tariffs that was threatened, we already have a trade deficit with the United States. They already have a surplus of close to $200 million. So I think that for me, we need a very adept foreign policy that, puts us in the middle road in international affairs, especially as it relates to trade, so that we are not running against the brick wall, upsetting superpowers like the United States, who obviously, of course, that.
But we also have a strong relationship with China. Talking about BRICS.
Exactly. We do. So why do we want to ruffle feathers? We already enjoy a robust relationship with China, a relationship that we can continue to expand. The opportunities inherent in that relationship. They have continued to invest in Nigeria, especially in infrastructure. And so I think there is a lot more to explore from that relationship that, I just do not see the additional advantage completely joining the BRICS blocks that we are not already exploring at the moment. So to me, it makes sense to just stay that middle road, continue to explore those relationships with countries like China and India, and obviously seek larger opportunities with the United States and their allies. I think that's the more sensible posture for us to take in dealing with the global affairs.
And now we're depending a bit more on US for crude, according to a Dangote refinery.
Yes,
they import about 9 to 10 million, even though Mr. Dahosa believes, well, it's it's a personal choice, according to what he said, for the company. But I mean, at the end of the day, we all make boast of the fact that Dangote is putting Nigeria in a map
Yes.
of oil refiners and
Yes.
not just importing refined products. So I
Yes.
guess it's the nation's problem too.
Well, again, well, you can look at it both ways, and I've argued on this program before that it obviously makes no sense to put a local refinery in a position where it has to export or import crude into Nigeria when there is domestic supply.
There's supposed to be.
Well, there's supposed to be domestic
I know, right?
supply, and obviously, I have argued consistently that there has to be a deal wherein the local refiner gets access to adequate crude locally, so that we can see the benefits as it reflects on our, foreign exchange policy. And again, that's why we're not seeing the benefits that we should be seeing, especially on the pressure on our foreign exchange, largely because we're still importing huge amounts of crude oil into the economy, albeit from a private sector actor. But the volumes are huge, and the forex required to import this into the economy is significant. And if we were doing that locally and leveraging on the export potential of the refinery, then you would have been seeing significant gains, in our foreign exchange. But it's a huge missed opportunity that I hope that, the new management in the NNPC will be correcting in the months to come, and I hope that that is done so that we wean ourselves of this dependence on being now, as it looks, we seem to be a net importer of crude. As the data shows. So and that should not be for a country that
and I know Dangote refinery had at some point applauded the government for the crude for naira policy and how that has helped, but it's not enough, or maybe our obligations as a country on our crude is overshadowing what they can do to domestic refiners.
Well, you see, again, it was well celebrated. The Naira to crude deal was well celebrated. And of course, the PIA Act also, specifically reserves a certain amount of crude for domestic supply. Now, the problem is, over the 2 years, well, close to 2 years, perhaps 18 months, when that deal had been in place, the refinery never got the adequate amount of crude that it wanted. Now, of course, you know that we already have so many loan swap deals that our crudes are tied to. Production plummeted at some point, and that sort of disrupted the amount of crude that the refinery could get. And perhaps that's a situation that has continued to linger till date. So obviously, I'm looking at a situation where going forward, we can reduce many of these swap deals that we do with our crude so that we can have a lot more for domestic supply, and so that the country can also make a lot more revenue from its crude, because we seem to have tied a lot to the loans that we have carried forward, in
I know
future.
AFDB preached against it using
yes,
resources
it's a real problem.
Yeah,
it's a real problem.
A lot of African countries seems to be tied up in it.
Exactly,
and
it's a huge problem. So we're losing future benefits and tied to loans that are not even supporting many of the productive sector. And that doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, just before we let you go, the countdown to the retaliatory tariff starts next week, Friday.
Yes.
How do you see it affecting us as a country?
Well, again, you have to look at it from a broad perspective. As I said earlier, we already seem to be seeing decrease in terms of trading to places like the United States, and I'm talking agricultural products, and things like that. So those disruptions are likely to linger, and we're likely to see less exports into many of these economies, like the United States specifically. I would argue that, giving the leverage, I mean, I understand that, the DG of the World Trade Organization, she manages an international organization. However, I think it provides us certain opportunities for us to be able to engage the United States and put together a brilliant trade team locally that can negotiate the terms of this deal so that it doesn't weigh so much on our exporters. But also, I think it's important to begin to diversify in terms of trade and begin to look at what we can benefit from the Free African Trade Agreement and see how we can improve or increase exports within the continent, because there's a huge market within the continent, and that provides a lot of market opportunities for our exporters within our economy. So I'd argue that that is another opportunity that we need to look towards capitalizing on. But even more importantly, I do think that in the race for mineral resources that is happening globally now, especially between China and the United States, where they are scrambling for resources to drive the electrical vehicle industry, that is a growing industry. In fact, there are projections that the 4 key minerals, which is cobalt, lithium, copper, and what's the 4th one? Those 4 mineral resources are going to accrue about $16 trillion in the next 25 years. Nigeria has a huge deposit of lithium. The question is, how are we going to be harnessing that resources that is on huge demand in the international and the global market, especially for the battery revolution? And how are we going to capitalize on that major mineral resource? So these are the things that we have to put on the table, especially in a global economy that is becoming more isolationist. You see a lot of dominant countries like the United States, like Germany, who are looking more inwards to bring back manufacturing into their country, to bring back jobs into their country. And that means less FDI, for countries like Nigeria. That means less exporting of excess manufacturing capacity to countries like Nigeria and other, developing economies. So we have to ask ourselves the question: if these manufacturing jobs will not be coming here, if these service jobs will not be coming here, what are we going to do in the mid to long term to substitute for this gap that will happen in the economy the next few years? So these are the things that policymakers need to grapple with, that in this fast shifting geopolitical landscape that we found ourselves in, where there's a race between the 2 dominant economies, countries like Nigeria need to wear their strategic hats and start to make economic choices that will bring back jobs to Nigeria, that will grow the economy, and that will make us relevant within the continent.
Yeah, within the continent, at least first. I think the conversation of, doing it within the continent is growing. But I mean, as you noted, the potentials on the continent is so much.
Oh, yes.
It's so much.
Oh, yes.
I mean, some resources that countries are looking for, we have it here.
Oh, yes.
But the thing is, can we add value? What are we doing with it?
Exactly.
We keep talking of potentials. All right, I hope one of these days the story will change.
Hopefully.
For us. All right, thank you so much, Managing Director of ASCOM, Adio Ayodele, for your time. And
thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Right. Okay, now, so let's do a bit of global news. In a rare and tense appearance at the Federal Reserve headquarters yesterday, that was the big news. President Donald Trump, he tarred the central bank's $2.5 billion renovation site alongside Chair Jerome Powell. I wish you could have those visuals. I mean, normally when you hear President Trump and Jerome Powell, it's all fights and all of that. But I guess as a leader, at some point, you just have to be diplomatic. So you can see Jerome Powell there beside President Trump. They took pictures. They did all the talks. There was no fight, at the end of the day. Trump sharply criticized the escalating costs of that renovation, asserting the figure had climbed to $3.1 billion, while Powell publicly refuted that claim, pointing out that Trump had improperly included the separately renovated Martin building that was completed in 2021. And I think President Trump said something afterwards.
And we're with the chairman, as you know. Chairman, come on over. And we're just taking a look at what's happening. And it's a tough construction job. They're building basements where they didn't exist or expanding them. And a lot of very expensive work. There's no question about it. And Tim has been with me for a long time. He's in charge of the committee.
Indeed. One of the reasons I wanted to see it, the overruns, the expenses, wanted to figure out why.
So we're taking a look, and it looks like it's about 3.1 billion, went up a little bit, or a lot. So the 2.7 is now 3.1.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it's just been.
Yeah, I haven't heard that from anybody. But our news said it about 3.1 as well.
3.1,
3.2.
This came from us?
Yes. I don't know who does it.
You're including the market renovation. You just added
our entire company.
you just added in a third building. That's what that is. That's a third building.
Well, no, but it's a building that's being built.
No, it was built 5 years ago. We finished Martin 5 years ago.
It's part of the overall.
It's
So
not new.
so we're going to take a look. We're going to see what's happening, and it's got a long way. Do you expect any more additional cross overruns?
Don't expect them. We're ready for them. But we have a little bit of a reserve that we may use, but no, we don't. Expect to be finished in 2027.
Interesting, right? Well, President Trump getting corrected there, and he says he will look into it. But we know at the bottom of this, what President Trump wants is the rates should be cut. And according to the reserve boss, he doesn't see the data to drive that. You know, so we'll see what happens in the coming days. Away from that, Bitcoin dropped below 116,000 today, pressured by large wallet movement and growing caution ahead of that U.S. Reserve meeting. You know what happened yesterday coincides with the release of a key crypto policy report that's due next week, Thursday. Bitcoin declined following a period of consolidation after hitting a record high of 123,000. That happened last week. Meanwhile, other cryptocurrencies remained subdued on Friday. Altcoins plunged but stabilized later in the session. Gains were tempered by reported whale trades and increased profit-taking amid elevated levels. Alphabet's Google Cloud has landed a major enterprise contract with ServiceCom, and it's valued at approximately $1.2 billion over 5 years. This is according to Bloomberg. The deal marks a significant win in Google's ongoing battle with Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure for large corporate clients. Under the agreement, ServiceNow, a provider of workflow automation and its management software, will deploy Google Cloud's infrastructure to modernize its internal operations and customer-facing platforms. All right, now let's see how our market closed yesterday before we come to the end of the program. And we see that the bullish run continues at Nigeria's stock exchange. Yesterday we hit a new high, 133,000 level is what we closed at. After it went up, the market went up 0.48%, almost 0.5% there. Equities cap is now at 84.2 trillion naira. The market gained 406.49 trillion naira yesterday alone. That's money in people's portfolio, investors' portfolio. So you could be a part of it if it's not too late for you. Activity yesterday was mostly green. Just deals closed in the red, 22,955. Top gainers, Sovereign Insurance, Academy, and FTN Cocoa. Top losers, ABC Transports, Union Dicon, and John Holt. Top trades, Japan Gold, UBA, and Access Co. So mostly the banking is still driving the market sentiment. But it's still a positive market for us. At intraday, I'll be here to give you intraday numbers, and I'll be doing 1 p.m. with Ladi Williams during Business Incorporated. So I hope to see you then. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Wish you the very best.